Good morning, everyone. I am Hai Vong, and I work in DISA Emerging Technology Directorate. We would like to welcome you to today's technical exchange meeting. JFrog will be presenting its end-to-end platform for global DevOps in today's session. I need to go over some administrative items before we get started. First, please mute your DoD 365 team session. Second, this session being recorded to allow future groups to present the capability by members of DISA and DoD community. Third, this is a public forum. No proprietary sensitive information should be shared in this session. Fourth, we encourage questions during the session. Please use the raise hand function in the Teams menu to alert presenters when you have a question. You can also enter your question into the chat area at any time during the presentation, and the question will be addressed in the order received. I must provide the following full disclosure. This technical exchange meeting does not infer any intention by DISA or DoD to enter into an acquisition, contract, purchase, or endorsement of the presented capability. This session is purely for informational purposes only. We do not control how session participants will proceed with the convey content. Access into the TAM video, slide deck, and other TAM artifacts will be made available through the National Security Innovation Network website, whose link is provided in the TAM session invitations. With that said, let us commence with the presentation. So over to JFrog for presenting. JFrog, it's over to you. If you're talking, I can hear you now.
So good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hi.
Yes.
All right, excellent. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Sudhindra Rao. I'm a strategic solutions architect here at JFrog, and I'd like to welcome you for a presentation about the JFrog platform, what we call as an essentials and all the services that encompasses the platform. And feel free to interrupt me anytime with the questions. Now, I wanted to make sure that this is more of an interactive, and if time permits, I also want to quickly show you how it looks like rather than just showing you the slide deck.
You're muted
Yes.
again.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's good now.
All right, excellent. Sorry about that. So the JFrog mission is to power all the software updates in the world. What we mean by this is we are not just the middleman in terms of tying the DevOps software development lifecycle from end to end, but we have services that seamlessly updates the piece of software or the binaries that you produce all the way from its inception to the runtime or the production where you basically run your software. So we have a play and a services, meaningful services behind in each of this, so which I'm going to get into a detail in a minute here. So one of the software chaos that we all have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is all the way from the left-hand side here is the universe of technologies, right? So you have multiple package types, multiple programming languages, multiple development methodologies are the paradigm that you're bringing in. And all of these packages or the technologies comes with a lot of metadata, policies, processes, methods, and the secrets associated with all of these things, right? So the challenge is, how do we bring order to some of this chaos? So the platform is unified on a single platform, where we all started like 10 years ago with this notion of artifacts, right? Which is a binary, which is an executable, that gets produced as part of your software development. And around it, there is a security aspect of it, and how do you store, optimize the storage, and also at the bottom line of all of these things is automation, right? So automating uh, and managing the life cycle of an artifact is our bread and butter at JFrog. And again, we all started back with the simple notion of an artifact, and then as we started innovating in this space, we had to optimize and standardize some of the metadata policies and processes in place. And then the question becomes, how do we what do we do with these artifacts once we manage as part of the life cycle management of this artifact? The JFrog does takes in all of this, the universe of technologies, and optimize it on a single platform, and then that needs to be distributed seamlessly to everybody, right? It could be your production servers, or it could be a devices that runs on your edge network, or to a customers that if you are distributing a piece of your software for their consumption. So JFrog, as you see, uh, does takes in just 30 plus package types and unifies them on a single platforms and manages the life cycle of it. And security is an inherent part of this platform, which I'm going to talk about. But the point to be taken from this slide is we are end-to-end platform, and we bring an order to the software chaos, right? In terms of managing at every step of the way. And talking a little bit more about the unified approach, the end-to-end platform will bring a lot of advantages in terms of visibility, and then also a governance in terms of life cycle management, and all the way from your Git commit to running your code on Kubernetes and everything in between. JFrog has a play in it, and at every step of the way, there is a continuous security where we have our security scanning service called X-ray, uh, where vulnerability scanning for major artifacts types and container images with package expansion. So what I really mean by this is we look for uh, vulnerabilities and also license compliance issues with the software artifact that you're bringing in. Um, and and what this means, we'll talk about it in detail in coming slides here. But the point here is we are not just as vulnerability scanning service that is offered on the JFrog platforms. It's a whole lot more than that. With this introduction of our JFrog security research team, we have findings on this malicious packages and some advanced security capabilities that we'll talk about. And again, all of these things does scale. We have large enterprise customers that manages millions of artifacts, petabytes of artifact storage, and we say this solutions can scale to infinity. Again, given the Murphy law, we need to have resources that needs to be allocated to the platform, but from the piece of software that we ship, it's truly scales really well. And again, we have hybrid and multi-cloud stories. So all the way, we all started back, and we still support open source is in our genes. So we do have Artifactory and X-Ray truly an open source. Two, a multi-cloud being self on anything in between from a hybrid to the multi-cloud, right? So from you running the platform on a self-hosted in your own data center to running your platform on cloud providers and in between, right? And we support all the way from installing our platform using Linux archive to running on a latest Kubernetes version and in between. And again, it's truly universal. What I mean really by this is, as you saw in the previous trial, previous slide, any piece of software that's written based on its own package manager, we should be able to ingest that within the Artifactory and then manage the life cycle of it. And again, all of these things we would not would be on our own island without our technology partners, right? So we have uh, pretty good integrations with some of our technology partners, all the way from Slack to any PagerDuty to ServiceNow, and all of this hosting's offered on the public cloud as well. So, and again, the JFrog platform, it's truly unified in terms of bringing in, stitching in all of these services onto one single platform. And again, where do we stand, right? Where is Artifactory, which is our core services? Where does it sit, right? All the way from your left-hand side source code repository. Let's say you're putting stuff in Git to a GitHub action. You could basically kick off a pipeline that would generate a binary that could be stored on Artifactory. So we manage all binary software package types. So we are at 30 plus counting, and the container image. So you could basically have Artifactory as a as your Docker image or Docker repo, and manage the lifecycle of it as well. And again, what does it brings in, right? At the heart of the platform, from a platform perspective, DevSecOps platform perspective, we have Artifactory where you can create repositories. We are going to get into the detail of this. You can create a repositories based on a particular package type, or it could be all the way from, let's say, NuGet to npm to Maven, or a Docker image, and then you can we provide plugins that integrates directly with your Git, or let's say you're building through your pipeline Jenkins. We have plugins that would bring in the artifact into the JFrog Artifactory service, right? And then manage that way. And all of these things, all the way from to the left-hand side with these integrations APIs, REST APIs, or even better JFrog CLI, we have a JFrog pipeline which provides you an end-to-end CI/CD platform and orchestration across the software development lifecycle. Right? We have mission control, where if you're managing multiple JFrog platform instances across the globe, mission control offers you an administration dashboard and provides you a centralized administration capability, right? And at each step of the way, like we talked about, JFrog X-Ray is not just a software composition analysis tool. It does keeps one thing in mind, which is the software, supply chain security. So the SBOM, or what we call as a build info, is at the heart of all of this X-ray. We do maintain the dependencies that you bring into your artifacts as part of your build, and X-ray can continuously scan and alert you. And in terms of or a mitigation, it can give you an advice on what exactly needs to be done to manage that piece of binary. And you can integrate the X-ray with the build so that your X-ray can fail a build if it finds a vulnerability or a license compliance issue, or when it evaluates a policy that you write against. And all of these things, in addition to the X-ray, once it says everything looks good, you can promote the artifacts from, let's say, your development environment to your pre-production to your production, right? So how do you do it? And we have this promotion processes workflow in place with this platform that will enable you to put in a metadata and then move that artifact from one repository to another repository, or even even another JFrog platform, let's say that's being tagged for production. And how do you do that? And one of the ways that the lot of innovation happening in this space is, how do you securely distribute a piece of software or an artifact from one data center or to a production environment? And the way we do this is what we call as a secure distribution. So we have invented a technology called release bundle, which is basically a bundle that consists of your software artifact, your metadata, or any properties that you want to bring in. all bundled together as a release bundle, and then we have an optimized way to distribute that to multiple JFrog Artifactory instances, or even to your edge, or to your IoT devices. So we do have a capability to basically sign your release bundle using GPG keys. And then when it gets to the other side, it basically unencrypts and makes sure your release bundle is not tampered along the way. So it's hugely interesting use case in terms of if you were to push distribute a piece of software from your, let's say, your commercial or a low side environment to the high side with this impact level classification, we should be able to do a distribution, an offline distribution, what we call as an offline distribution securely, so that your packages are made sure that it's not tampered along the way. So distribution is one thing, and again, with respect to the Artifactory and X-ray and distribution, we also what we call as a JFrog Connect, which provides you an ability to deploy, operate, and monitor your piece of software on your edge or IoT devices. And again, all of these services is what we call as a JFrog platform, DevSecOps platform, which truly gives you an ability to take a piece of software that's in your source code repository to all the way to your production environment or to your edge devices. And along the way, we have integrations into the one of the core services within the platform that make sure the life cycle of this artifact is managed on a one single unified platform. Absolutely. I will get to the details on X-ray software composition analysis tool where software doesn't support SPDX. We'll get to that, and I'll show you exactly what we are doing right now. Um, from a platform advantage perspective, integrated platform, works teams across JFrog, DevOps, and security orgs, right? So it's all binary centric. I just wanted to make sure this platform is binary centric. That means the input to this platform. So you basically bring in a binary, which is an artifact or an executable. And then this slide basically talks about how JFrog X-ray service and what the platform advantage within this, right? So again, this is a very high level introduction to some of the capabilities. Based on the questions, we can get into some of the details around it. But I just wanted to make sure that all the way from the left-hand side, the DevOps and security is applied at a data model level. That means what I mean by this is as soon as an artifact goes into a certain repository, X-ray has a capability to look at that binary and then look for any security vulnerabilities. And again, from an advanced contextual analysis and remediation guidance, I'm going to actually quickly show you a simple demo towards the end of this presentation. We just not just look for a CVE and the license compliance issues, right? We are not just a policy matching tools engine. We are way beyond that, meaning we basically look at the threat model associated with the binary that you bring in against a particular CVE. Based on that threat vector and the exploits, we basically will tell you, look, you are basically, even though the CVE said it's a high severity, but we think this is a medium severity because you're not doing this, right? So you're not the code that got wrote that ended up as this artifact. We tear open it and looked at and we say, since you're not exploiting or it's not exposing to this particular vector, we think this is a medium vulnerability. So this contextual analysis will give you an idea on not just where you stand, but also will give you a prioritized view of what exactly needs to be fixed rather than the tool showing you like there are 500 CVEs that you need to take care of. And we'll also tell you a mitigation factor in terms of if you upgrade to this particular version, those CVEs could be managed better and things like that. And again, advanced security research at your fingertips. We curate our own database with the JFrog security research findings, and we have some. A lot of these findings are also published as a blogs in the open source software packages that we find, and it's completely integrated into this platform. And and again, a lot of these, the workflows would need record keeping and a traceability with the metadata well beyond the SBOM. We do have this we do have this flexibility on this platform to generate a report or generate this metadata as part of the scanning that would help you well beyond just a software bill of materials. And all of these things will enable you to finally curate the piece of software that you want to bring in from outside, if it's a third party or a dependency that you're downloading from internet. And there is a way for you to curate and catalog the piece of software that you want to let your developers utilize. Yes, absolutely. So the platform do have a capability to integrate with a ticketing system such as ServiceNow or a Jira, where you could open up a service ticket based on this X-ray finding. So let's say an X-ray finds a vulnerability that needs to be taken care of by your SecOps team, then it can definitely open up a ticket in some of these integrations that we have with Jira or ServiceNow. I'm just mentioning two of those that you could manage the ticketing information in the Jira, and that ticket opening a capability that workflow will also bring in all the way from which developer requested this piece of software to start with, and or which developer did the build that got uploaded into the Artifactory, and that audit information along with the notification, right? Once the right software is updated and X-ray scans it again and said everything looks good, the developer who requested it will get notified saying that yes, this piece of software is cleared, but you can start using it. So it does have that capability in terms of integrating, and all of these things could be really flexible in terms of expanding this platform using what we call as an user plugin. So you can actually write some groovy code to extend the platform capability in terms of, it could be in this terms of integration on managing Jira tickets, or to the ServiceNow. You can write your logic in terms of how do you want to manage these integrations as well. Again, I want to quickly show you some of the integrations what we have, all the way from the build tools, dependency manager, from a dev team declaring a new dependency, and how Artifactory can help you resolve those dependencies. And once the way it does it is you could configure Artifactory to talk to a remote repository. It could be a npm.org, or any or Docker hub, and the Artifactory can go pull those artifacts from this remote repository, or remote repository can be another Artifactory instance as well. The Artifactory, your development team, that artifact is cached, and that caching mechanism, the life cycle around it gets managed by Artifactory, meaning that if there is a newer version of the package that you want to pull in from, let's say, npm.org, it basically pulls the newer version on what we call as a lazy load mechanism. In that way, your development team or the build is not blocked, and it manages the different versions and resolves those dependencies within the Artifactory. And again, X-ray becomes an important part at this point. When you pull a dependency from an open internet, you might want to make sure the X-ray immediately analyzes that piece of software that you're bringing in and alert you if there are any problems with it, right? And X-ray, by the way, also have plugin to all the way to let's say you're writing your piece of software in Visual Code, VS Code, Visual Studio Code, or Eclipse or anywhere. So we have plugins, X-ray plugin, a very lightweight plugin that you could install in your VS Code, and it can tell you right when you, let's say you're writing a Java code and start importing log4j packages, and it can immediately tell you that there is a known vulnerability in this, and even before you compile your code, it can tell you there is a problem. You don't have to bring in the piece of software all the way into the Artifactory and X-ray, scanning it and notifying you. So this can happen all the way towards the beginning of your development lifecycle. And once you commit the changes in the version control and some of the CI servers that you could that you do all the way from Bamboo or CircleCI, or you can even use JFrog pipeline and use JFrog CLI to build your pipeline each step of the way. Artifactory has a plugin that could bring the piece of software that you build using your CI servers or build tools or dependency managers all the way into the Artifactory. And again, once the build, as I talked about a few minutes ago, what we called as a build info, which is like a bill of materials, right? Which shows you all the software, all the dependency, and the metadata associated with it. We manage the build info object within the JFrog Artifactory. So this build info existed way long before what we started coining this term of software bill of materials. This is our SBOM, and you can version these SBOM and then manage the life cycle of it in terms of gaining the visibility in terms of what you're bringing in, all in one single place. And again, the metadata associated with any of this build, as part of your building your piece of software is managed within the Artifactory realm. And again, once the package is built and once the artifact is built, you can use it for internal distribution, or what we also have something called Artifactory Edge, which is a read-only Artifactory server that you could deploy at the edge location or at your location where you're pulling this artifact from the Artifactory Edge to your production servers. And again, you can distribute this piece of software from your internal Artifactory to a production Artifactory Edge instance, which is a lightweight Artifactory server, but it's read-only. It's super important to set up something like this so that the access control and the entire auditing capability can be managed all the way from JFrog Artifactory instance to the distribution to this Artifactory Edge where the artifacts are pulled. Again, a lot of all of these things what we talked about there could be a provisioning tools, pipeline or a runtime all the way from Red Hat to VMware to Rancher to Docker. I mean, you could basically run the runtime where all of the Artifactory can run on any of these platforms. I want to actually quickly talk about, I know we are 30 minutes into this call. I have 10 more minutes of this slide deck. I want to actually quickly talk about one of the basic use cases in terms of, what do we do with artifacts, right? Once you build it, what do we do with respect to the life cycle of it, right? One of the critical service that we offer on the platform is what we call as a replication, right? So in this distributed world that we live in, where our developers are scattered across the globe, and and with this microservices kind of architecture that's been evolving, lot of teams that sits across the globes are pretty much disjointed in terms of it could be the processes and the tools that they're using, but a lot of these at the same time, a lot of these teams that are geographically dispersed are also very interconnected when it comes to from a consumption of a piece of artifact that one team develops, or it could be within the same data center, which could be the same geography, but another team consumes, right? With this microservices architecture, it's we're all the teams might be distributed, but from a systems and a process perspective, it's not, and it's all very well interconnected, right? That's where the replication comes into the picture. So replication is, as it says, name says, how could I distribute a piece of software, right, between two instances, right? We talked about it could be distributed CI, a lot of artifact dependency, reliability, location, and redundancies, right? Or from a network consideration perspective, you might want to make sure the latencies between these two geographically dispersed location is considered, and some of the requirements along with it when you want to replicate a piece of software from a location A to the location B. And you might want to do that reliably and make sure redundancies are taken into the considerations, right? You don't want to be replicating a duplicate or a redundant piece of artifacts. So again, what is replicated, right? So replication is all about application binaries and metadata, and also some of the permissions and users access is not replicated, keeping security in mind. And again, replication could be unidirectional. So that means that you can do what we call as a push or a pull replication, and you can do this at the repository level, right? So again, this is the traditional way of doing this is basically you could have a push replication. So that means that you can push an artifact from Artifactory instance A to the Artifactory instance B, and artifacts from the source to the target repository are replicated, and it could be based on a cron or an event-based replication, right? So for example, when I say event-based replication, as part of your build, um, you can upload a piece of artifact into Artifactory instance A, and that based on that event on the creation or a deletion of artifact, it could get replicated to the second instance, and it's fast, it's asynchronous, and again, since it's based on a cron or an event based, it's very highly reliable in terms of artifact delivery. And push pull replication is a reverse of this. It's mostly invoked if you're doing a pull from a centralized repository like Maven repo and things like that. If you want to mirror an artifact from a central repository to here, you can proactively populate a remote cache. So uh, some of the way you could configure this from a topology perspective is you could basically have a star topology where you have a central team in Amsterdam and you have separate teams. You could do a push or a pull replication, right? And again, the as we talked about, an additional development could happen in one or other facilities, and you could have a main CI server in one facility and have uh, Artifactory instances in other location, and then you could do a pull or push replication. Again, this capability is being introduced in the product for last few years. And again, you could also have a star or a mesh topologies where you could be pulling or pushing from each other repository in a different location. So again, what I really want is an advancement in some of the capabilities when it comes to the replication, what we call as a federated repositories. If you are familiar with Artifactory, we support repository types, right? You could be a local repository where your developers are developing a piece of software and then they're using local repos to manage it. or it could be a remote repository. Let's say you're bringing artifacts from a centralized repository and caching it on the artifact tree. You could use a remote repository. Or you could have a virtual repo that could encompasses all the local and the remote under one single addressable URL. We call it as a virtual repos, right? The fourth kind of repository is what we call as a federated repositories, right? So as the name says, it federates the artifact in multi-directional replication, right? It could be an n-directional replication. So when you say I have two instances, to keep it simple, Artifactory instance A at location 1 and Artifactory instance at say location 2, let's say or EU com versus con US, you can have an npm local where your developers are pumping binaries into it, and as soon as that repository is marked as a federated repo and configure con US and Indo-Pac-Com, the binary that ended up here would get replicated automatically. And it could be an event or a cron, but the federated repo concept itself is you should make this as an immediate transfer of artifact between this. So in that way, the developers who are sitting on the other end of the spectrum, they would have this artifactory made available to their consumption immediately. So some of this, from a transport perspective between these two locations, federated repository does have some requirements in terms of latency, but I think the lot of work has gone here in terms of how do we efficiently manage the transmission of this artifact between these two servers. Again, all of these artifactory management from a deployment perspective, we also support high availability, meaning Artifactory, when you're installing this on premises, the best practices used to install the 3 Artifactory servers. And again, Artifactory servers, as you might know, every Artifactory server manages your Artifactory. And again, there is a backend database, and then there is a file store that manages the, and again, we are based on checksum storage. That means that there are no, duplicates artifacts or that's stored in different repositories. So the platform makes sure that if an artifact is stored on a file storage, it's unique unless it's checksum changes. For example, you're adding a new metadata file or the artifact version change, then it will let you store another copy of it on the file storage. In that way, the storage is optimized, and you have a redundancy, right? So in terms of scaling Artifactory, as you grow in terms of artifact size, you can do an horizontal scaling, and then and again, when it comes to updates, you could do rolling updates and things like that. So again, as you see in this diagram, all 3 Artifactory servers will have a single NFS storage or a S3 cloud storage and a database, a single database that could be set up in a highly available format as well. And again, all of these things will be front-ended by a load balancer, so you can deploy each of these Artifactory in a 3 active cluster nodes and synced up by the load balancer. And if one of this Artifactory goes down, you still have two Artifactory nodes that could still respond to your end users. So, and again, HA will give you a truly enterprise capability in terms of managing your piece of software in a highly available format. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a minute and then quickly take another 5 minutes to talk about what the X-ray, because security is playing a central role on the JFrog platform. With all the focus on the security these days, when it comes to software supply chain security, or it could be the piece of software that you're bringing in from outside, I just want to quickly show you how X-ray works. So again, X-ray, as you see in this, has two major important things, right? So it basically curates the X-ray database, which JFrog maintains centrally with the external sources. Could be an NVD, uh, uh, and in combination to the variety of sources, we also curate the definitions within this database from our own findings, right? From our own JFrog security research findings. All right. And then once a piece of software or an artifact gets onto the Artifactory repo, and then X-ray is indexed to go look at those piece of software, and it basically builds what we call as a component graphs, not superficially, but to the nth level. So, for example, if you're bringing in a Docker image which has 7 layers, and each of the layer brings in certain piece of software, it basically builds an in-memory component graph, and once and also builds some metadata associated with it, right? So the the component graph, and then the second, there are two more pieces to this puzzle, right? One is the policies. The policies will basically gives you like a rule-based engine, rule-based policy that will tell you, okay, I want to create a high security, high severity policy if the CVE scores is more than 9. I mean, the X-ray gives you a ability to go look at, define this, or a license policy that you want to evaluate against. So this component graph, once it builds, that policy is applied on every piece of software that is in this graph. And if there is a problem, you can build a what we call as a watches. And again, this watch could be act on a build or a repository, and it could take an if there is a violation, it could take an action, right? So we have some webhook or emails or a Slack integration, or if the violation says, okay, fail the build, it would fail the build. And then and you could also say prevent this download into the Artifactory. So X-ray kind of is built hand in hand, or it's an inherent part of this platform. And as soon as an artifact gets onto into the repo, it basically checks. And again, these database will be updated on a daily basis. Or if you're running within an air-gapped environment, you could basically export these definitions on a periodic basis to your, let's say you're running X-ray Artifactory within in a secure environment, air-gapped environment. You could basically export this X-ray database definitions from the platform on the low side, and then export it and bring that as a zip file, import it onto the X-ray on the high side, and then have it scan it. In that way, you're basically running these checks against the latest database definitions from the X-ray perspective. And again, all of these, like we talked about, it's integrated into the CI/CD. As soon it comes in, it gets scanned and the policy checks. If it's a critical violation, like we talked about, it could act on the build, or it could act on the release bundle as well. We talked about release bundle is the concept. It's a bundle that you can build that could involve metadata or an artifact, and then you can have X-ray check that before you actually distribute it to your production instances. Right? Some of the recently added features with an X-ray is enhanced CVE data. That means that we are enhancing and refining the CVE data that we bring into these databases. And again, malicious package detection, it's one of the core features that we have added that would find these malicious packages from the JFrog security research findings that are integrated into the X-ray. And again, the third thing which is super interesting is operational risk policies, meaning let's say you're bringing a policies or an artifact from a Git open source repo, and this operational risk will basically look at how many Git commits have been done on the piece of release that you're bringing in. If the release is 6 months old, if there are no releases that has been put out in, let's say, 6 months, it will alert you saying that, look, you're bringing in this one-off or even the number of committers is less than, let's say, 5. We think it might be an operational risk to bring in that, um, and alert developers who are most interested to get something working. So it'll alert the end user or a developer to tell them, and we'll put out a scoring system, and based on the risk policies that we evaluate. And again, industry standard SBOM, other than Cyclone DX and SPDX, we do have, you can export the SBOM in the format that industry expects, and way beyond that. And again, Jira integration, we talked about it, where it could let you handle Jira ticketing if X-ray finds a violation. Okay, so one of the things that I quickly wanted to show you, and again, everybody is talking about zero trust, right? Verification, um, and and zero trust means different. If you talk to different personas, right, within the, or I should say, it really depends on the stack and which layer that you're looking at, right? All the way from the network layer to the application layer and everything in between. Zero trust means different things for different people. From from the realm of DevSecOps, from the application space, the story that we want to tell, and we have this implementation, is what we call as end-to-end binary lifecycle management. The What I really mean by this is, these, and again, as a lot of you have been doing these practices for a very long time, the concept that the silos, what we call as development or operational people, and even the site reliability engineers, SRE, or the security teams, that kind of very disjoint even to this date. And again, the line between some of these teams are kind of blurring, which is a good thing. Uh, but in general, these teams are pretty much disjointed in terms of their tooling, their practices, their policies that they bring into the place. So one of the things that the May of 2021, with the executive order, with the SBOM, was directly called out, and the cloud strategy associated with it, or the piece of vulnerability or the compliance issues that you need to know. But the bottom line is, we want to know all of these have a direct impact with the national security, right, when it comes to the cyber security. So everybody knows this, and everybody has gotten super familiar with this executive order, and some of the agencies within the government putting out their own version in terms of, how do we adhere to this mandate. We at JFrog, has a core capability in terms of visibility, right? So everybody wants to know what packages that we're bringing in, what's it's included, and who brought that packages in, right? So the visibility is super important from the executive mandate, and the limited visibility towards the more complete visibility will enable you from an awareness, from a risk perspective, right? As you see, every layer that you bring in, all the way to the nth layer, we want to make sure that we have visibility to it, and then we should have an automated way to build this object, not by hand, and have a platform, look at this each level from a security perspective, from a vulnerability perspective, and a license compliance issue, and way beyond that, and should alert you that you're bringing in something at the level 3, which is a bad actor, and that would prevent you from taking a bad artifact which has problems to your production. And again, the mantra that we always say is, always verify, never trust. And again, the zero trust verification works on two things, right? So you have this DevOps persona where you're bringing, your developer is working in its own island, and they're bringing their own tooling such as Jenkins or TFS. And once a developer creates this right repository, I'm kind of color coding this for a reason here, I'll come to it. JFrog Enterprise Plus is a subscription within the platform. Uh, from a uh, from this point of discussion, uh, let's not worry too much about the subscription level here, but I want to make sure you focus on the right repository, right? The right repository is where the developers will be building their piece of software based on the artifact that resides in that repository. So once the, and again, there is a SecOps team, uh, which has its own security practices and the policies that they've written. They've stood up another instance of Artifactory, what we call as an open repository. What we mean by this color coded here is this Artifactory instance runs in a DMZ environment, and then where it has access to the internet. These right repository, let's say this run in an air gap, doesn't have any access to the internet. So as soon as the development team or a developer request a piece of software, the request flows into this open repo. The SecOps policies gets applied towards the piece of software that you pull in from the internet, and then gets applied on it. Once once the piece of software, again, this is important. Once the piece of software gets stamped, get approved by SecOps, the self-service curation process kicks in, where you federate that piece of repository, the piece of artifact from the open repository into the right repository, right? So the what this means is you're basically managing the not just the life cycle of the artifact, but also the security aspects around it and the security life cycle around it, right? By completely isolating the bad actor if it finds one, and then you can open up a Jira ticket, and then isolate that and notify the developer saying that, look, you requested a piece of software that has an issue. Okay, and again, the SBOMs get created. You shift left to go to the SecOps scenario, and then once you have a build, you can promote it to the read repository, like your Artifactory Edge, and then you can push that out to the production using self-service distribution process. And again, all the way from to the left and to the shift left to the ship right is our mantra in terms of how do we do this. So my the from a presentation slides perspective and the content perspective, this is an end of presentation in terms of how do we do this, right? I really want to quickly show you if there is if you can see my screen. Let me know if you can see my Artifactory platform screen here. I'm going to quickly log in. Quickly log in here. Before this presentation, I quickly ran a Maven build using JFrog CLI, and then uploaded that build into Artifactory. And then if you look at the Artifactory builds, my build name is called dring build. And one of the build that I did a lot of build, and one of the last build that I did at 10:31 this morning was this build, and that got published into the Artifactory. And if you look at the X-ray data associated with it, it basically gave you 8 violations, right? And some of them were medium, some of them were low. And then and again, you can go back and look at which one is security violation, which one is license. From a security violations perspective, I want to actually quickly bring this one up. This is CVE 2021-4432. As a part of demonstration, the Maven project that I built had a log4j version, which you all know from last December that kept you awake. And again, the CVSS score, if you look at this, version 2 was 8.5, which is medium. And we at the JFrog have an opinionated severity approach, and we said, okay, look, this is medium. This is even though the severity is medium, we think that it's low. And I talked about this, and it'll give you a summary on what it is, and it'll give you a detail what is this vulnerability causes, right, with this JDBC appender. And it says currently the exploitation of this vulnerability is only possible if they have direct control of this configuration file. And that's the whole reason we are saying that this is low. And again, remediation, it'll tell you, look, you might want to remove this class statically from this jar file by running this command. And again, it'll tell you JFrog research severity reasons, right? It says, look, this exploit has been published, and you can go and prioritize how you want to fix it. And it'll also tells you what's the impact level, right? If there are 10 layers, it basically tells you this is the ring build and this is the jar file that's included. And it also gives you a reference in terms of a JFrog blog post, or if there are any advisory that got published as part of this platform. This is a very unique capability in terms of giving you a contextual analysis on the piece of software that you're bringing in, not just trying to match the CVEs and the policies against. And as I also talked about, it also tells you what is the operational risk, what's the cadence looks like in months, and what the commits looks like, that where you are bringing this, and if there are any committers. And it also tells you, look, this is a high risk if you're bringing in this JUnit or Handcrest core jar file from this version. And again, this will also tells you what the descendants and the ancestors, right? It will tell you what all the piece of software that you're bringing in from a descendants or an ancestors that you're pulling in, right? So you could basically export some of this as an SBOM, as an SPDX or a Cyclone DX format, or another flexibility in terms of, let's say you're bringing in a COTS application and then you want to actually input the license, right? Which is not a well-known license such as Apache or GPL. But if you want to create your own custom licenses, the X-ray will let you do that.
So Hindra, we have a couple of questions in the meeting chat. Can you go over, does the platform have the capability to consolidate and update bug tickets?
Yes, absolutely. So as we talked about, there is a Jira integration that could enable you to manage tickets within Jira context, and then there is a contextual information that gets associated with that with respect to the ticket, who opened it, which developer. If there is a content, let's say if there's an X-ray violation, it will tell you what the violation looks like and what the severity associated with it. And you can manage that with Jira, or let's say you have another tool that we have integration with ServiceNow. So one of the things that I really want to quickly show you is from a reports perspective, there are let's say scan list. You could basically have you could scan a repository, or you can scan a build or a release bundle or a packages, and each of this scan would have an artifact name and security issues and things like that, right? So you could bring in you can basically go and look at that package and look at the SBOM associated with it, right, with this component. And so what I basically wanted to show you is this goes way much beyond. I know, Myron, you asked this question. We can take this offline, and I want to actually quickly, show you that we support SPDX and Cyclone DX at a very basic level right now. There are a few things that we are working towards that I can go with you offline in terms of capabilities. But I think the more important things that I want to quickly highlight in the interest of time, we are already out of time here, is the SBOM, the build info object itself is maintained within the Artifactory, and that's a JSON package, right? JSON object that you could export, or you could version some of those build info object based on your build or a version that you bring in, and then archive that, and then go back and manage that build info object for going back in time in terms of when what packages were brought in. And again, you could export some of these X-ray reports as an X-ray report, right? Like you can create an on-demand report. All of these things could be automated using, the REST APIs or a JFrog CLI that is a first-class citizen within the platform. Again, I wanted to actually stop here unless you have some more questions I can take. But I wanted to actually thank DISA and all of you who have taken an hour of your time, busy schedule to come look at what we have been working on. And again, my name is Sudhindra Rao. I lead public sector team here at JFrog. My email address is srao@jfrog.com. You feel free to email me or text me. Happy to get onto a phone call and then discuss with some more use cases that we have been working. And again, the platform is very well poised for consumption by federal government. With the DoD, we have a lot of DoD customers who are actively using this all the way from impact level 2 to impact level 6, and it's being used to manage hundreds of applications across the DoD, right? And we can definitely, if you ping me, I can give you references in terms of how some of these DoD agencies who are utilizing our piece of software and what use cases would be happy to share with you. With that, I want to actually quickly see if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm done presenting here. Thank you so much, and back to you. Hi.
All right, thank you very much, sir. At this time, if you have any final question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask question verbally to the JFrog. Thank you. So it doesn't appear there's any other question from the audience. So at this time, I would like to conclude this time session. If you are interested in further pursuing this capability, the company contact information is listed on the screen right now. And if you don't comfortable to contact the company directly, you can also contact my directorate, DISA Emerging Technology Directorate, so we can help you to get in touch with the company as well. So I would like to thank you, JFrog, for taking your time to present your capability to DISA community. And I would like to thank you everyone for taking your valuable time to attend the time session as well. And I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you very much.